than the Air Force Thunderbirds. Right now, we want to take you into the world of the ambassadors in blue. And even if you've seen them before, we think this point of view is unique.
Precise, controlled, breathtaking. This is the world of the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds. Over the years, millions of people have thrilled to sights like this, and countless others have seen it on television or in films. Today, the tradition continues in an unbroken line of excellence. Here now is the story of how they do what they do, year after year, show after show. It usually begins this way for most observers. The resplendent red, white, and blue F-16s arriving for another show. This scene has been repeated nearly 3,000 times since 1953. The ambassadors in blue, as they're called, arrive with as much panache as you would expect. Only it impresses you more than you thought it would. Everything is so precise. There are a lot of things that go into making the difficult look routine. And in the next few minutes, you'll learn about most of it. But let's start with what most people focus on, the pilots. They are the personification of professionalism. Only 11 officers are assigned to the team. And with more than 100,000 officers in the Air Force, well, you get the idea. It's tough to get in. Even the team members will tell you there are a lot of deserving folks that never make the cut. Here's Lance Unjum, slot pilot.
I'm the lucky one that was chosen to do it. I know 100 other guys that could fly the show in my position and do the job as well as I do.
And it's just as tough for the maintenance crew to get assigned to the Thunderbirds. As soon as the airplane comes to a halt, they are literally swarmed upon by the cream of the crop in Air Force crew chiefs. As we'll see, there is literally no margin for error. And a highly motivated support staff is absolutely essential. People like Staff Sergeant Paul Duncan.
We're the best we can be. We try to put 100% in everything we do.
Consider the fact that in the entire history of the Thunderbirds, a performance has never been canceled due to mechanical failure. That kind of record requires painstaking effort. And there is more than just the mechanical soundness of the airplane. They have to look good, as well as work properly. And that means hours of cleaning, and more cleaning.
Even when you're just cleaning, you're always looking at it. Like the two people that work on that same airplane all the time, we're constantly looking at it. You get to know that airplane better than you know out of the back of your hand.
Paul's crew chief, Staff Sergeant Steve Thompson, puts this perspective on it.
Look at it this way.
That there is a reflection of my personality, Paul's personality, who happens to be my assistant crew chief. It's just a reflection of us. And if that looks good, we look good.
The instrument employed by the Thunderbirds is the F-16 Fighting Falcon. Without a doubt, one of the most popular fighters in the world, it is frontline equipment for perhaps a dozen nations. Its Pratt & Whitney F-100 engine and advanced computerized flight controls give it the ability to turn up to 9 Gs instantly. The F-16 is also the first airplane the Thunderbirds have had in a long time that can instantly be made ready for combat, which the unit would do if called upon.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take 2 photos each on a count of 3. And 1, 2, 3. And 1 more, please.
A big part of what the Thunderbirds do on a more routine basis is to help recruit for the Air Force. And this scene is not at all unusual. Here, new recruits are being sworn in at a ceremony with the Thunderbirds. It's a thrill of a lifetime for the recruits and supplies long-range goals for those with the vision to dream of someday being on the team.
Electronics training guaranteed and computer repair. I'd like to be a pilot myself, but you know, chances aren't very good, but you know, I'm gonna try for it. Maybe even a Thunderbird. Maybe.
Into the float. The work of the Thunderbirds begins at their home base at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada. Here, they hone the skills needed to put on an impressive and safe performance during the show season. And it is here that they come as close as possible to the elusive goal of the perfect air show.
When we go on the road to put our shows on, we're at a level where the average air show spectator is not going to notice that there's anything wrong with a maneuver or with a show. That's the level, that's our basic entry level air show. But there are a lot of things wrong with the show, and it's very difficult to go out and fly an air. It's impossible to fly an air show perfectly. You just can't do everything right, and so we just continue to strive to make no mistakes during an air show. You can't do that. You can get close, and therein lies the challenge.
Diamond ready now. Gradually, the airplanes come closer together as the practice session takes them nearer to the actual show routine. When they are just inches apart, it seems dangerously close to the average person. But not to the pilots, because this is what they have been trained to do. The practice doesn't make perfect, but it makes you awfully doggone good.
Given that the aircraft are operating, we can go out and fly day in and day out and enjoy it while we do it, put on a good air show. That it is supposed to look exciting. We want it to look exciting, but it's really in no way dangerous because we're trained. We spend 4 months doing nothing but flying twice a day, every day, getting ready to go on the road for the show season.
And now the practice is over. It's time to start the show. The precision that will be seen in the air begins on the ground. The ground crew first. Each step is measured and practiced, with each man trying to look a little more sharp than the other. And then come the pilots. It's like some precise dance choreographed to perfection and seemingly effortless in its execution. For the first-time Thunderbird pilot, this moment can be one of high anxiety, despite all the practice.
I remember when I flew my first couple of air shows, and it was, let's face it, it's like you're on stage. You're a performer. And I get the butterflies and all that. You know, my first show was in Phoenix, and we had 300,000 people there, and I was lucky to get the airplane started, let alone go fly an air show in it. But that wears off after 5 air shows or so. Now I've flown 100, 120 air shows, and the butterflies aren't there, and you get back to the basics of trying to fly the airplane and put on as good a show as you can.
At this point, each move of the performance is already etched in each pilot's mind, like a template. Each location demands a slightly different way of approaching it, but the essentials are the same, and the planning is made easier by the number of times these pilots go over and over the same routine.
And the show that we put on, we just don't come out here and wing a show. The air show that we fly, we have practiced 1,000 times. And so we come in and we know exactly what we're going to do. We know exactly what's going to happen during the air show. And once again, that adds to our safety aspect of the mission.
Thunderbird, check 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's run them up.
Once the Diamond is airborne, the solo pilots do their thing, and there's no turning back now. All of this high-performance beauty and grace has not been specially created just to thrill the crowd. The team is demonstrating maneuvers which have been proven successful in actual combat situations. Variations on the same aerial tactics are taught to every Air Force pilot. It is the discipline, timing, and practice that help to bring maneuvers to low level and transform otherwise ordinary flight into this. The F-16 is one of the best show airplanes the Thunderbirds have ever flown. And not just because it looks good.
It just so happens that it's also a very good formation aircraft. And once you learn a few tricks of the trade, so to speak, you can keep that aircraft in a position on a smooth day within, say, 6 inches of where you really want the airplane to be, and that's pretty good.
maneuver builds in intensity as the planes seem to be linked by some invisible thread. In reality, each pilot is lost in total and complete concentration on the task at hand. Yet, ironically, this is what the pilots consider the relaxing thing to do.
When I want to get away from the rigors of the office, then if I get a chance to go get in my jet and go do it, then that's what I want to do. So it's very enjoyable in that regard.
At last, it's time to brake for landing. And reluctantly, they bring the F-16s back to Earth. Being back on the ground signals the end of another show and the beginning of the process that will start anew almost immediately. For the pilots, there is always a feeling of high exhilaration and disappointment that it's over for now.
A lot of us are in fighter aviation for the love of aviation, and a lot of the other things go along with it. Certainly we have the opportunity to serve our country, and in this capacity as a Thunderbird, we not only represent the Air Force but also the country, and I'm very proud of that. But I think the real heart of the matter is that we do it for the love of aviation, and you see an awful lot of sad fighter pilots when they're asked to sit behind a desk for long periods of time and push pencils instead of fly jets.
But that day is inevitable. Thunderbird flying officers serve a 2-year tour, with one half of the pilots changing each year to ensure a smooth transition. Almost before they know it, it's time to leave the ambassadors in blue.
And I'll look back with it on the experience, and I wish it wouldn't come to an end so soon. I'm going to miss it very much.
But what a legacy has been left behind. Over the years, the Thunderbirds have won the McKay Trophy for the most meritorious flight in the Air Force, and 7 other outstanding unit awards. And so, another flight demonstration goes into the logbook, and preparations are already underway for the next show, and the next. Maintenance people will again inspect every nut and bolt. Pilots will debrief, and supply people will try to stay one step ahead of the game. But it all works, and given what we've just seen, it seems certain the Thunderbirds are assured of many more years of dazzling performances.
In the entire history of the Thunderbirds, a performance has never been canceled due to mechanical failure. Now, that's quite a record. And from the looks of things, that tradition of excellence is going to continue. Now, in our next story, we meet one of the most impressive small jets ever built. Usually, when we think of a trainer, we don't think of a hot, sophisticated airplane. That is, until you meet a family of airplanes called the Hawks.
It's the dawn of a new era in naval aviation, signaled by the sight of a brand new airplane rolling out under its own power. Meet the McDonnell Douglas T-45 Goshawk. This is the way Navy pilots will be trained from now on. But the Goshawk finds its roots in a British aerospace design. And in order to fully understand just how remarkable this airplane is, you really have to start with the British. The Hawk was conceived from the outset to be an efficient and reliable multi-role trainer with significant operational potential as well. It was begun as a private venture in the early 70s as a trainer for the Royal Air Force and is now generally regarded as the most successful two-seat trainer attack plane of its era. Since it was introduced in RAF service in 1976, the Hawk has set a standard for jet training airplanes the world over. It is praised by students, instructors, and engineers alike. One of the major factors affecting student training in the early stages is confidence. Everything about the Hawk helps to instill confidence right from the start. The cockpit provides a comfortable working and learning environment with an uncluttered instrument layout and simple operating procedures. All of this helps the student to pass quickly to the main goal. That is, getting the Hawk into the air. Most of the initial concerns about flying the airplane soon fade as the student makes the transition to a fast jet environment. Confidence builds with the Hawk's easy handling, which means the instructor can get by with minimum interference. Perhaps the best thing about the Hawk is its ability to safely demonstrate all kinds of maneuvers, predictably. Maneuvers which could have dire consequences in a less controllable airplane. Increasingly, the student's ability to think and react under pressure is tested, and the Hawk can handle all phases of the transition. Until at last, the student is ready to apply himself to the real job, learning to use the Hawk as a fighter. In order to put weapons on target accurately, a high level of expertise is demanded. Because the airplane handles so well, it frees the student to concentrate on the sight handling techniques needed to deliver weapons on time and on target. As you can see, the instructor has a great view from the back seat from which to provide guidance. From this point, the student can branch out to learn more about the defensive and offensive maneuvers, navigation at low level, and more. Practically alone among frontline trainers, the Hawk has the ability to go operational and pack a healthy wallop. That means it can do the job that might require additional, more expensive airplanes. The savings resulting from this type of aircraft usage also help set the Hawk apart. And when it's all said and done, the student may find himself piloting the Hot Tornado or some other frontline British jet. The Hawk can also be a frontline airplane, especially with the help of forward-looking infrared radar and night vision goggles for the pilot. Add to that a laser rangefinder for weapons delivery, radar warning, and flare and chaff dispensers for self-defense, and you have a frontline airplane, not just a trainer. As a final measure of the inherent quality of the design, witness the Hawk 200, a single-seat version. Even though McDonnell Douglas is the prime contractor on the T-45, British Aerospace is responsible for a good deal of the construction, including the wing center section, tail, windscreen, and canopy. Rolls-Royce is supplying the Adour engine. Along with the completed airframes, McDonnell Douglas will provide a complete training system to go with the T-45. It includes computer-aided instructional devices, terminals, and academic materials as well. Here's Vice Admiral John Fetterman, commander of the Naval Air Forces for the Pacific Fleet.
The T-45 aircraft represents the cornerstone of a total integrated training system concept. The T-45 training system will provide the Navy with the capability to produce up to 600 carrier-capable pilots per year through the year 2015.
And that's a feeling which is echoed by Jim Worsham, the president of Douglas Aircraft Company.
And the entire world of training has focused their eyes upon us and the Navy for what we're doing. It's a unique program, a program unique for both government and industry.
Now that the U.S. Navy has picked up the gauntlet, that ensures the Hawk's survival into the next century. Current plans call for the Navy to acquire 300 of the T-45s. And while this plane may look a lot like the RAF Hawk, there are some mighty important differences. The T-45 has a tail hook, a new main and nose landing gear, and strengthened airframe to allow it to take the stress of carrier landings, especially with students at the controls. Final assembly of the T-45 takes place here at the Douglas Aircraft Plant in Long Beach, California. And it was here that the plane took its first flight shortly after the rollout. Main testing of the T-45s will take place in Yuma, Arizona. And you can look for the first student to climb into a Goshawk in the first quarter of 1990 at Kingville, Texas. When the Goshawk system is fully up to speed, the Navy can expect to train pilots with 42% less aircraft than today. It looks like a pretty good deal for all concerned. The bottom line is, today's students are tomorrow's fighter pilots. And the Hawk is going to be the starting point for a sizable number of the free world's pilots. A Hawk on final approach will continue to be a common sight for years to come.
addition to all of the other advantages, the Goshawk will save over 48 million gallons of fuel every year. Sounds like a winner on all counts. Now for our historical piece, we revisit the world of this old bird, the B-47 Stratojet. I was in the Air Force when these came online, and I remember how much we thought of the airplane. Join us as we turn back the pages of time.
For a time, it was the queen of the skies. And although it never fired a shot in anger, the B-47 Stratojet occupies a place as one of the pivotal jet bombers in aviation history. Here is the story of the jet and the men who flew it. That story began for many men on the plains of Kansas. Here, near Wichita, is McConnell Air Force Base, known as one of the toughest schools in the Air Training Command. The men who came here learned to fly one of the hottest airplanes of its time, the Boeing B-47.
Gentlemen, on behalf of the 3520th Combat Crew Training Wing, we welcome you to McConnell Air Force Base. Now, you're here for an intensive training period to qualify you as crew members in the B-47 airplane. Now, to acquaint you with some of the history of the Stratojet, we take you back to 1943, to the dark days of World War II.
At that time, the B-17 was the mainstay of the Army Air Corps. The Super Fortress, the B-29, was just starting in production. At the request of the Air Force, the Boeing company began studies on the next generation of big bombers. This would be a bomber with something new at the time, the jet engine. These studies, thousands of research hours, and exhaustive wind tunnel tests led to a six-jet swept-wing airplane. On December 17, 1947, exactly 44 years from the day the Wright brothers flew at Kitty Hawk, the XB-47 took to the skies. That flight sparked a revolution. Jet-powered airplanes were definitely here to stay. By early 1948, the Air Force had decided it wanted Stratojets. Lots of them. That decision led to reopening of the government B-29 plant in Wichita, Kansas. Two years later, in March of 1950, the dream came to life as the standard production models began to roll off the line. Within 4 years, 100 B-47s had been built. The first production model was not the end. A continuous program of development kept the Stratojet in front. From the current model was developed the RB-47, a reconnaissance model. The radical new design was powered by six 6,000-pound thrust J-46 GE-25 engines, which are grossly underpowered by today's standards. But still, it gave the Stratojet a maximum performance of 606 miles per hour at 16,000 feet. Still, the B-47 often needed help getting airborne under conditions of extreme weight. And that's where JATO bottle thrust provided an additional 33,000 pounds of thrust.
So, gentlemen, that's the airplane. Now, you'll learn that she flies by teamwork. A combat crew of 3. Aircraft commander, pilot, and observer. Now, you pilots may just as well regard the observer as the blue-chip passenger. When you're coming in over the target, it's his baby. When your observer calls for a second station, all this vast program, all this effort, is no better than the observer's skill in those few seconds over the target. Now, your instructors here at McConnell are prepared to qualify you as B-47 combat crew teams. Now, it's up to you.
And for that day and age, it was a tall order. The training to fly a B-47 was as complex as any in the history of the Air Force. A seemingly endless mass of systems and procedures were involved. And with only a crew of 3, teamwork was vital. It was needed to understand the 27 miles of electrical wiring, the 1,000 electronics tubes, hydraulics, compressors, valves, and gauges without end. The observer was probably the most important crew member in terms of putting bombs on the target. He had to learn about radar and the key, this small handle which actually controlled the bomber while it was on its final bomb run. Then the electronics took over, helping to compute all the variables for an accurate bomb run. Primitive by today's standards of laser and optical guided bombs. But for the time, it was the best thing going. After weeks of intensive effort, it was time for the crew to solo the airplane. More often than not, the outcome was predictably routine. After all, the Air Force usually sent its best to train in what was the hottest bomber in the world. McConnell turned them out en masse for assignments all over the world. B-47s were deployed from Europe to the Far East and Africa. To achieve and maintain a high degree of readiness, then as now, simulated missions were flown under rigorous conditions. And our now operational crew is quickly thrown into the fray.
Control tower, this is Air Force 1956.
Ready for takeoff, over.
Air Force 1956.
Cleared for takeoff.
Roger, coming up on power.
Although it was heavier than any World War II bomber, including the B-29, the B-47 was classified as a medium bomber. In the sky, it was as sleek and capable as anything in the air.
Gear up. Gear coming up.
The B-47 could climb at 4,600 feet per minute and had a range of over 4,000 miles. But like any jet, it was very thirsty, and refueling was a common practice.
Tom, our scheduled refueling time is 2,400. It's about 6 minutes to go.
Where's that tanker airplane?
Hold your present heading. I have the tanker on radar.
You should have him in sight now.
Roger, I have the tanker in sight. Nice going, Tom. We're going in right on the money. Sam, get set for refueling contact.
Roger, Cliff. Refueling checklist complete. Slipway door open.
Get your credit card ready. She's all yours.
Okay, Sam. Watch our fuel distribution. I'm ready to contact.
At the time, for security reasons, aerial refueling contacts in the Strategic Air Command were handled in radio silence between tanker and bomber. This delicate maneuver became so routine in the Air Force that even at the time, a refueling was taking place every 3.5 minutes, around the clock, somewhere in the world.
We've just about got our load. Okay, pressure disconnect.
Refueled and ready to fly through the long night to the target, a sleeping city 7 miles below. At dawn, exactly on schedule, bombs away.
Steady on 045. We're on autopilot.
Roger. I have the target on radar. Center the PDI and give me second station.
The PDI is centered. You have second station.
Roger. I have it.
Time to go, 180 seconds. This was the payoff. 3 men, a machine, and the skills of thousands of people funneled into a few critical seconds.
You have 30 seconds before bomb release.
Seconds.
10.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
As it turned out, the B-47 never did drop bombs in anger. But many a contrail curved through the world's skies as a symbol of the readiness of the Strategic Air Command. And the men who flew the B-47 will always remember that it opened the door for jet bombers in the U.S. Air Force. That role will never be forgotten.
There aren't many B-47s left these days, but this one at the Museum of Flight in Seattle is one of the finer examples still in existence. Now, we shift gears back to the present. One of the best units in the Air Force is the 318th Fighter Interceptor Squadron, known as the Green Dragons. We recently visited them to find out why they were so well thought of. The answer became obvious rather quickly.
In the distance stands one of the most impressive mountains in North America, Mount Rainier. And in the foreground, one of the most impressive Air Force squadrons in North America. This is the Great Northwest, McChord Air Force Base, home of the 318th Fighter Interceptor Squadron, the Green Dragons. The 318th is one of the few remaining active duty air defense squadrons in the Air Force. Their world-famous blue-tailed flash is a recognized symbol of excellence in air-to-air tactics. From the first moment new personnel arrive, they realize this place is special. Here is Lieutenant Colonel Craig Bernhardt to explain why.
Once they are here, they immediately get the attitude of a can-do attitude. We're going to do it. This is the cost, but we can do whatever we're tasked to do. And with the facilities, we have some of the finest facilities. You have good facilities for people. You take care of them, and they perform. And that has been the winning solution in Tactical Air Command and in the 318th.
The Green Dragons make use of the F-15 Eagle, arguably the best air-to-air fighter in the world today. It first flew in July of 1972 and immediately established itself. Its two Pratt & Whitney F-100 engines develop more than 50,000 pounds of thrust, and that gives the airplane a thrust-to-weight ratio of better than 1:1. Translation, it can accelerate tremendously, going straight up. Here's a look at the airplane taking off in full afterburner. This is obviously an impressive sight, but don't expect to see this all the time. Usually only planes on alert take off this way. Most of the time, military power will get the bird airborne just fine, thank you. Now, the Eagle is large for a fighter, but that size is necessary to support the large radar, which can detect targets well over 50 miles away. Also, it has huge wings to make the plane highly maneuverable. But even though you're dealing with an airplane the size of a World War II medium bomber, make no mistake, this is a fighter plane. In fact, all those capabilities and the special environment here at the 318th are helping to continue a unit history that is steeped in achievement.
And if you have a great past like this squadron, and the squadron started back in 1942 in Bedford, Massachusetts in P-40s, went through World War II and has flown aircraft such as the P-51, the F-86, the F-106 Delta Dart, T-33, and now the F-15, and next June we'll be going to the F-16. It kind of builds on itself. Squadron won the Hughes Trophy in '76 and then again in '84, which is for the best air-to-air squadron in the Air Force. We've been nominated 2 years since that for the award, although we didn't win it. People just get it inside themselves and start believing in themselves that they're in the squadron and you're going to succeed.
As Colonel Bernhardt mentioned, the future will bring the F-16 Fighting Falcon to McChord. And the F-15s will be transferred to a National Guard unit. But the arrival of the new aircraft will not mean a change in the basic mission here. The specialty of the Green Dragons is air defense. That means attack warning and assessment. It means having airplanes standing by on 5-minute alert, here and in California. And in the event of war, it also means defending the Northwest against attack. And there's more.
Last summer we intercepted a drug smuggler coming up the West Coast. We've gone off on Navy planes, hijacked planes, people who are lost. And basically we're here to police the airspace around the United States.
Because the mission here concentrates on air-to-air combat, this is one of the best places in the country for other units to come and hone their skills. Today, the Marines are occupying part of the tarmac. The Death Rattlers of VMFA 323 have brought their FA-18 Hornets to go against the Eagles of the 318. You see, in the air-to-air game, you learn by flying against airplanes other than your own.
When you're flying two F-15s against two F-15s, sometimes you lose your partner out there, and you don't know if you're gunning your partner or you're gunning the opponent, so there's some hesitation. When you're flying against other opponents that are dissimilar, there's no hesitation. You know who's good and you know who's bad.
At least for the sake of today's exercise, the Hornets are the bad guys. And with the pre-flight paperwork just about finished, it's time to mount up and go flying. This is what the pilots live for. And all throughout the pre-flight phase, the excitement builds, no matter how many times you've done it before.
It is a very natural high, and it's like an addict. You need to fly more and more because it makes you feel great inside, being able to command a ship like that and to fly.
Along with the Eagles, the Death Rattlers get their Hornets rolling as well. It's time for man against man, airplane against airplane, in the toughest form of military flying, air-to-air combat. This kind of performance just wouldn't be possible on a consistent basis without an excellent support staff. The Eagle is a marvelous but complicated bird, and the maintenance crews are the part of the picture that you don't often see. They're behind the scenes, making it all happen. People like Tech Sergeant Kathy Hardy.
It's the 318th. I mean, we actually spend more time here than we do at home. We have to like it. If it's not clean and if it's not the way you want it to look, it's going to reflect on everything else that you do. And if it's a nice place to be, you're going to enjoy your work a little bit more.
It takes approximately 45 hours of maintenance per flying hour to keep the F-15 flying, which is an awful lot of work. We have inspection docks, and every 100 hours in the F-15 you inspect it to make sure it's in good shape, and the inspections range from 1 day to 3 weeks.
But even with the long hours of maintenance, the Eagle is a much easier airplane to take care of than the older generation airplanes, a fact which is greatly appreciated by the staff. Here's Tech Sergeant Jim Baker.
Things that you work on, the flight controls and the maintenance portion, the upkeep, they don't break as often as the F-4s did. And in the areas that you have to go into the work, it's a lot easier accessible areas. Where the F-4, you just about have to take half the airplane apart to get to it.
I'd say some of the most dedicated people in the Air Force are our maintainers who work these long hours, keep these planes flying, and yet don't get paid, say, the same amount that the pilots do. So they are really the unsung heroes of the squadron.
The Eagles must also be kept looking good on the outside, and that's where the paint shop comes in. As much detail and care are taken here as in every other part of the maintenance process. Right now, the Eagles are being repainted, and the familiar blue flash on the tail will be replaced by the tail code TC. Since the 318th was one of the last units in the Air Force to be allowed a colorful unit emblem, there are admittedly mixed feelings about the change. But as Colonel Bernhardt points out,
we as F-15 pilots fly very similar to the F-15 pilots all over the world. The standard tail insignia are 2 letters for F-15s. And we're falling in line with the rest of TAC and the rest of the F-15 fleet to have those letters.
But even after the blue tails are gone, there is and will always be a special feeling here. As you've heard, this unit has won at least as many accolades as any other squadron in the Air Force. And this is where it really shows, in the air. The key to staying alive in this tough world is what the pilots call situational awareness. That means that even when there are multiple aircraft, multiple threats, and fighting in the vertical and horizontal planes, the pilot who comes out ahead is the one who knows at any given point where he is, where the enemy is, and what can be done to put ordnance on the target.
totally encompassing. There is no time to think of anything else except the flying that you're doing. And specifically for us, flying becomes secondary. Working the radar and the weapon system and doing the basic maneuvers against other airplanes then becomes primary. So you don't have any time to think about what's happening.
What it takes is a supersonic athlete. And if you don't believe it, listen to the physical exertion required in just a few seconds of aerial maneuvering between an Eagle and a Hornet.
3,000, lights on. Off the wing. Control there. Airspeed there. You did essentially a level turn there. Get that nose up there. I think I can do it. Tracking kill, knock it off. Roger, knock it off.
For the men returning from this kind of exercise, there are really no winners or losers. Just good pilots who are even better as a result of lessons learned.
Flying in these high-performance aircraft and pulling G-forces, say if you pull 7 Gs, your arm weighs 7 times its normal weight, or your head weighs that, and it is very physically demanding. It's like isometric exercises. So you come back and you are mentally and physically exhausted from a great workout, but you feel just absolutely fantastic.
And so, another day draws to a close in the life of the Green Dragons. They have a complex and difficult mission that is being accomplished because the people here desire success more than anything else.
I love it here. I would practically do anything to stay here for the rest of my tour, which is another 10 years. I plan on staying around here. The pride of the 318th, it's there. It's genuine.
As far as I'm concerned, this is one of the best units I've ever been in. There's more teamwork here than what I've seen in a lot of other places. And the teamwork here contributes to the overall mission that we do here.
Whatever we are tasked, we have always done extremely well. We're ready to do our peacetime, wartime, or our training mission right now. I think we're at peak combat capability.
And tomorrow, the Green Dragons of the 318th Fighter Interceptor Squadron will demonstrate that fact all over again, here in the shadow of Mount Rainier.
Well, now you can see why other units come from far and wide to fly against the 318th. If you want to be the best, you got to learn from the best. Well, that's all for this edition of the Military Aircraft Video Report. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, tell a friend. We can always use another viewer. So we'll see you next time. So long, everybody.